So without corals, we essentially seeing a lot of pillars of our economy collapsing. And then we would see less fish. And that wouldn't be good for our ecosystem at all. My name is Megan Fountain, and I'm a research assistant at the Perry Institute of Marine Science. So we're here in the northern Exumas. We're here to assess reefs and treat, if needed, for stony coral tissue loss disease. So stony coral tissue loss disease is one of the deadliest coral diseases to date. It started in 2014 in Miami, and since then it's made its way throughout the Caribbean, and it came into our waters in 2019 off of the coast of Grand Bahama. And since 2019, it's been slowly spreading throughout our islands. So what we try to do is assess different islands when we get like reports of different diseases that people may see. Then we would go ahead and send out a team to go assess and treat if necessary so that we can keep the disease contained in a certain area. Stony coral tissue loss disease affects over 40 Caribbean coral species, and it's exactly how it sounds. So it affects these stony corals and mainly the reef building corals, which are super important. And what it looks like is, it looks like the tissue can be kind of like coming off of the skeleton. And what you're gonna see is you're gonna see bare white skeleton, what we call recently dead, and that's how we mainly identify it. And these reef building corals can have multiple, we call them lesions, which is where the disease is. The reason why it's one of the most deadliest diseases is because corals take years to grow. And this disease can kill a coral in a matter of weeks or months. And that's why it's raising a red flag for everybody. So on this trip, we spent 4 days assessing around 14 sites. We started in the middle Exumas around Hawksbill Reef, and we went all the way up to the northern Exumas, and ended at Dog Rocks. We did multiple dives a day, and some sites we did more than one dive. To assess the reef, what we do is we get down there, we find our starting point, and then we swim for 15 minutes in a straight line, counting every single coral we see that is over 4 centimeters. And we would also state its health, so whether it's bleached, it's paling, which is the stage before bleaching, whether it has stony coral tissue loss disease, whether it has another disease, and then we would also state its species using codes. In our assessments, once we find corals that have stony coral tissue loss disease, which we also refer to as SCTLD, we would then go up and get ready, which would entail mixing our treatment, which is a combination of base 2B, which is a paste, and some amoxicillin. And we mix that paste, and then we fill syringes and we head down. And what we'll do is we will squeeze the paste, the treatment out of the syringes, and kind of lightly press along that disease line, like that border of living tissue and dead skeleton, that bright white. So that's what we would do, press along there. We would check the coral to make sure there's no other lesions, because these corals tend to have multiple lesions. And then we would mark it off, count how many corals that we treat. In specific cases, as in some brain corals, they have very deep valleys, which is where the polyp, the coral, the actual animal lives. We would have to take a hammer and chisel and kind of chisel a little line, a little disease break, as we would call it, so that we can then insert the treatment into that disease break, because the valleys are so deep, the treatment is not able to fully get into the coral's tissues as we would like. So in the Bahamas, we're an island nation, archipelago of different islands. We rely on corals as our first line of defense for coastal protection from hurricanes, storm surges, anything. And that's why they're one of the most important to us. But if we go down under, they're sort of the basis of the ecosystem because they provide habitat for many fish that we also love. They provide nurseries for the fish. And then that also in turn helps with the economy, with fishermen, with dive tourism. So without corals, we essentially seeing a lot of pillars of our economy collapsing. And then we would see less fish. And that wouldn't be good for our ecosystem at all. So starting off on this trip, we were able to treat over 400 corals, which is amazing for the past 4 days. We had a total of 14 sites. When we came on this trip, we knew that 7 sites were confirmed to have Stony coral tissue loss disease and 7 weren't. So we went to the first 7 sites that did not have it. We checked it and it still seems not to be there, which is a success for us. And then the last 7, they did have it, unfortunately, so we were able to treat there. And as we moved more up north, it seemed as though there was more disease as you moved more up north. So we can kind of track how the disease is moving, which is also great because it just gives us an idea of where we should be looking and like the limits of the disease so that we can keep treating there. So there are many benefits to liveaboard. And it's mainly like logistical benefits. So with planning field work, you have to find a boat, you have to, especially off of an island, most times you have to drive to the marina, so you need a car, you need a place to stay. Hopefully that place has many rooms for our wonderful big team. And it can become a lot to kind of plan all of that. And we have all of this here right one. And not to mention, the tanks. The tanks are most important, one of the most important parts. This boat had a compressor and it was just very beneficial because we didn't have to continuously go to a dive shop or to the mainland or to the closest dive shop to refill tanks, which can be a nightmare sometimes logistically. And it also takes time out of our day. So we were able to get all the dives we wanted to get in. We were able to do it smoothly. Being able to have your work in one area is great, you know. Just being able to jump off into the water, dive, get back up, and then you can just continue working. You don't have to worry about anything, you know. It just logistically, it was beneficial. So our captain Fraser and his first mate Olivia were amazing, and their family on board. It was an amazing experience. It was great to see just like kids interacting with the natural environment and just bouncing around, and I just love to see that. And the food was great, which is super important for our team. It is super important, you know, because after a dive you're super hungry. So it's one of the benefits. Their energy was great. They were super helpful. They were able to be flexible for our needs, which is overall helpful. It makes our lives easier, and we also try to make their life easier. So being able to work with people that are flexible and that want to help is always beneficial to us. It makes the job way easier. And we just want to say thank you to SeaKeepers. We're ever so grateful. This is not the first trip that we've been on because of them, and hopefully it won't be the last. And we just want to say thank you because you guys help us to get our work done.